This panel is titled Black to the Future, Nurturing the Next Generation of Black Environmentalists. Now, we're going to meet the full panel shortly, and it's a panel that truly covers young people from toddlers all the way to young adults. But first, we're going to begin by setting up this dialogue with a powerful film. And to help introduce that, I want to introduce Manny Almonte of Young Masterminds Initiative and Camping to Connect. We're going to talk a little bit about this award-winning film called Woodhood. Manny, tell us just a little bit about the film we're going to see.
Thank you so much, Vince, and welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. Woodhood is a film that we created in 2021, and it premiered on May 2022 at the Mountain Film Festival in Telluride. It is currently going around film festival circuits in the US, Canada, and Europe after winning the Best Short Film Award at the Banff Mountain Film Festival. Woodhood features Devon. Devon is a 15-year-old kid from New York City who loves skateboarding and craves a quiet place. Devon, the film follows Devon on a weekend-long trip that we did that year with about 8 young men from between 12 and 18 years old. Devon was the only one out of that group that had participated in our program before. He started with us in 2019. And you will basically see how an experience after the pandemic, after being isolated, after having gone through some traumatic experiences, how he's able to basically connect with these other young men in a spirit of brotherhood, and using nature as a vehicle, for them to come out of their comfort zone and share experiences, right? So Devon would be the only one that had ever gone camping out of that group of kids, and the reason why we have kids of various ages there is because we wanted to show a representation of our program, which works with 12 to 18-year-olds. And traditionally, we have 12 to 13, 14, 15, 16 to 18 in any given trip. But in this occasion, you have this interaction between different age groups there. So I hope you enjoy it, and we can get to talk about it afterwards.
Yeah, the film is beautiful, and thank you so much for allowing us to present it. And now we will present Woodhood.
The city is a lot of things. At home, I'm hearing music, food cooking, cars driving by, people screaming out their window. So I can't really go nowhere. I didn't like people at one time. They were doing some messed up stuff to me. I always fantasize about being in a quiet place, alone. When I was growing up, people I knew didn't go camping.
Take the spider! Get him!
Likes you, he likes you.
What's one thing you want to take away from this experience?
I'm blanking right now.
I forgot.
You forgot?
Yep.
There's a certain level of closing in that we inherently do when we're in closed-in spaces all the time.
I don't want to burn it. No, that's disrespectful.
Burn it!
I am this close.
These are the experiences that we want you to start to see as normal.
What's happening?
This isn't a path.
Are you sure? Because this is what we're often told we can't do.
Getting lost is okay. That's how you learn how to navigate.
You build bonds with people that you didn't know. And now, this is like our hood, basically. This is the Woodhood.
That was amazing. A great way to kick off this discussion. And we're going to start with brief introductions. And I'll start with you, Rose.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm Rose Brusaferro. I'm an environmental educator and research scientist in Baltimore City. I'm currently the acting director of Nature Preschool here at Nature Forward in the DC Metro.
All right, and then Tanoy, if you'll introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tanoy Thompson. I currently work at Conservation Nation, the North American Association of Environmental Education, and the Cincinnati Zoo. I serve in consulting role, managing various projects and working with young people all over. And I'm excited to be here.
And then finally, Curtis.
All right. Hi, everyone. And just such a pleasure to be in community with everyone today. And such an honor as well. And my name is Curtis Bennett. I'm the Director of Equity and Community Engagement at the National Aquarium in Baltimore, Maryland.
And then Manny, if you'll introduce yourself again, and then we'll get right into the discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. So once again, Manny Almonte. I am the founder of the Mastermind Connect Men's Collective and the Young Masterminds Initiative, nonprofit organization, which is the nonprofit in which Camping to Connect is under. And I'm here in Denver, Colorado. I'm Brooklynite by way of the Dominican Republic. I lived there for 27 years, and now I'm here in Denver, looking to expand our work into this area.
Manny, one of the interesting things about the film in terms of the perspective is the point wasn't to teach these young men about camping. You were just able to use the camping experience to teach them other things. How important is that to help people understand?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I always say, as we have entered into this space of, the outdoors, outdoor education and whatnot, we didn't start this way. The Young Masterminds Initiative was a program that was created as a way to give back by this men's collective, men of color who came together, starting in New York City and then spreading all over the country, so that we can help each other, influence one another in a positive way, and show our vulnerabilities and hold each other accountable. And one of the things that we wanted to create was, wanted to give back. That was one of our pillars. And we realized within the first 6 months of starting the organization that there was so much that we needed to learn, and even a lot more that we needed to unlearn, in the way that we were, brought up. And, by sharing experiences and conversations, and like when I offered the guys to go camping, I had a resounding, come on, man, Black people don't camp. Come on, like, what are you talking about? And this was in 2017. And we started to work with this young man as a way to give back, because we saw that there was so much that we were learning and experiencing that we could just show this young man. But also, the new generation coming up, I'm 40 something years old. I want to call myself, but there were so many things that we were learning from them as well. And the whole program, or the whole organization, the Masterminds Initiative and Mastermind Connect, are based on this one dynamic. We do not offer advice. We offer perspective, and we share experiences. So when we went camping for the first time, and I'm talking about the men of the Mastermind Connect, they loved it. First of all, the camaraderie, the brotherhood, being disconnected from technology, but then talking around the campfire about our struggles and the things that we're finding in common, and struggling on a hike, that many of them, for most of them, was their first time, and supporting each other. And, somebody lost their car keys, and like the whole team went back to this whole hike that they were hating, like the whole trail back to then go back up, and they found it, and, winning together. And what an experience, right? So coming back then, they wanted to do more of it. And as we were working with this young man sharing different experiences, then we started to offer them that program. And we realized that it was even more impactful for them. But the key to it was that this young man didn't see necessarily just like a facilitator of color. They saw a whole organization of people who look like them and can share experiences with them. They saw a group of men who they themselves had not gone camping or hiking until a year before. And now they're leading a camping trip or an expedition. And for them to be able to say, listen, I see the fear. I see how this may be challenging for you. I'm with you there. I'm barely, I barely started a year ago. I was you recently. And now I love it. I'm here working with you on this. So the kids immediately see themselves. We see ourselves in them as well. So this aspect of being able to relate, this whole idea of having nuanced conversations and listening to one another and offering perspective instead of advice, then they start looking at us as brothers, as we're building a brotherhood, rather than a teacher or a facilitator or a grown-up trying to tell me what to do or how to act. So I think that's key for us, as you could see in the film.
I want to ask all of the panel, and I'm going to start with you, Rose, but I'd like everybody to reflect on this. I'm curious, what made you personally passionate about nature, and then how important is it to you to nurture that same kind of passion in young people to get different outcomes, whether it's education, whether it's career? Rose, what got you started? What drives you to share that passion and nurture that passion in youth?
For me, it was a sort of spiritual journey in which I was at a point in my life where I lost someone very close to me and needed to search for something to be close to that person again. And so the natural world was able to give that to me, to be out among the trees and the water and all the other life out there made me feel connected to that person again. And to know, so there is for me personally, a very spiritual element of well-being that comes from being outside on a regular basis. When you research shows that when you talk to people who end up in environmental careers, there are a couple of things that they talk about which led them to their profession. And it's often having a role model who worked with them as a young person to connect to nature, and having recurring experiences in places that become memorable to them, and then having some profound experience as a high schooler or college student that made them expand their worldview. And so it was the person that I lost as a 19-year-old, it was the role model who connected me to nature as a young child. And so in addition to all of the health benefits that you get from regular contact with nature, for me, there's a real spiritual component as well. And a lot of my research focuses on ecological identity and how people children especially, how nature influences their definition of themselves. And so what I liked about what you were saying, Manny, when Vince said, you weren't teaching them how to camp, you were just inviting them to the experience, there's the model of ecological identity development starts with feeling safe and happy in nature before you can go on to learning how to ID flora and fauna, developing naturalist skills, and then going on to actually advocate in tangible legislative ways. So that was a lot of things to answer the question, but I think it's all relevant there.
Oh yeah, that's great. But Curtis, let me throw it to you. Kind of the same question. What sparked your passion, and what drives you to nurture that same passion in young people and young adults?
Absolutely. So I think for me, it started really as a kid. So I grew up just outside of Washington, D.C. in Bowie, Maryland, Prince George's County. And for me, it was always this idea of nearby nature. So, it was in a townhome development, and there was this lake, and the neighborhood's called Lake Arbor. And, I closed my eyes, and I can still remember, you're seeing the ducks and the geese, and you're hearing all the ducks and the geese, and you're seeing the turtles that are basking on the logs, and, you're seeing the occasional fox or raccoon. But it was also that time with family. So whether it was like my parents and I and my brother going out on these walks around the lake, or it was us barbecuing or grilling on the deck, and just having that connection with people that I trusted, people that, really were caring about me. And then that sense of community in that time in the outdoors. And, there was always a sense of wonder and magic and awe that started to foster over time, right? That I could see the same animal doing the same thing that an animal does every single day. And every day it's like this, oh my goodness, like it's the most incredible thing. And, I think one of the other things that really sparked for me was just different types of experiences over time. And, I'm remembering this moment in Manny to the film, there was a lot of reflection time that you and your program created, which I love so much. And what really resonated for me was this trip that my family and I took on the West Coast to a lot of the national parks. And this idea that these natural public lands are places for you too. And my mom made my brother and I journal. There is no way we would have done that on our own. So I know she fought some battles to make that happen. But what was really interesting is I gave a talk a few years ago, and it was the first time I'd ever read what 12-year-old me thought about when seeing the Grand Canyon or seeing Yellowstone for the first time. And, and not a shocker, there's the same feelings of wonder and awe and magic as a 12-year-old that I still feel now as a 35-year-old. So, it's really, really interesting to see just how powerful those moments of feeling are. And again, I think that was really pulled out really well in the film. And then in terms of what inspires me to build that connection and cultivate with other people, it's being able to support people and co-creating opportunities with people that are most relevant and relatable to them and their needs, to how they're building their own personal unique relationship and cultivating that over time with the outdoors. I feel like it's just like with any relationship, you're constantly feeding it. And what you need out of that, it changes over time. And so you're kind of going on your journey. So yeah, I'm really, really passionate about, really meeting people where they are in their own journey and how best to support them in that.
Excellent. And Tanoy, the same question to you. What sparked your passion, and how important is it to you to share it particularly with young people?
Absolutely. So many great thoughts and words thus far. For me, it was very similar to a lot of the other speakers today in the film. I grew up in the Bahamas. That's where I was born and raised. And so growing up in such a beautiful country, I love the beach. And just anytime that I could get to the beach and get underwater, I was happiest. And my mom and dad didn't really know what to do with me. I mean, they were like, okay, we'll just get her dolphin things, or here's a dolphin book. And, I was always looking at hermit crabs and digging in the sand. And my cousins and I would always joke whenever we went to the beach with my grandmother, she was fearful of me going past a certain point, and she would hold on to my ankle. I just remember just wanting to explore and get underwater. And I had the opportunity when I was 12 years old. I called up our small local aquarium and was like, could I volunteer? They didn't have a volunteer program. I was like, I don't know. I love animals. I love the water, and this is the only aquarium we have. And that summer, the biologists took me under their wing and just let me explore and grow. And I got scuba certified. And so I just had these experiences during the time that I was about 7 to 12 that just really solidified my passion for being outside and exploring nature, and not really knowing where that would lead, but knowing that it was part of my calling. Growing up in a country and then immigrating, to another country when I was in my teens, I always felt this huge pull to get back to my country and to give back to this country that gave me so much as a child, and to bring my daughter there. And to bring all of the knowledge that I learned through my studies and experiences here in the States back to the Bahamas and connect with conservationists and scientists there. And so that passion led me into working and collaborating with conservationists and scientists there to put on a program. And through great funding through Conservation Nation and the Cincinnati Zoo, I was able to launch a pilot program last year. So Manny's film, I was literally tearing up the entire time, because that feeling and seeing their faces and seeing that opportunity, that exposure and that experience, those three words just keep coming up in terms of getting students and children outside and connected, and seeing that also come alive in the students that I worked with through this pilot of this program, Bahamians, Birds, and Botany, and bringing other Bahamian scientists in and collaborating and just getting them connected it was a full circle experience, and it just really solidified the path and that passion and that pull that I've had my entire life. And so for me, it's been a really emotional, just awesome reflection, just seeing the film and hearing everyone's stories. And I just feel really grateful for that.
Appreciate that. Manny, we have a question in the chat about the film, and it's people clearly very moved by it, and some young men wanting to know, how do they become mentors? I mean, are you at the stage where you're looking for other mentors for Camping to Connect?
That's a great question, because yes, we do need all the support that we can get in many different ways to scale the program up. The way we started was that the volunteers for our youth programs were exclusively men from the Mastermind Connect collective, simply because these were men who they themselves were looking to become the best version of themselves, to help each other find balance in life, recognizing the value of vulnerability and accountability. So it's not just about being a man of color, right? It's about having this mindset of, open to learning, open to sharing perspectives, the realization that we cannot do it alone. That's why community is important and brotherhood for us. So the criteria for us, as we're looking now to expand even beyond where we have the chapters of the organization, based on the need for this type of program, the impact that we're making, and knowing that, if we have the ability to go broader, we should. Then we're starting to become open to working with volunteers who are not part of the collective, but there still needs to be a criteria of, you must be working on yourself. You must understand our values and principles and live them. So that, because that's what we're looking to not only show this young man, but one thing I didn't say before is that the whole goal of this, not the whole goal, but like what we aim to do as we create brotherhood and community, is to set these kids up for success in different ways, allowing them to make good choices in life when they come at crossroads, but then also to be part of this brotherhood beyond their youth, right? So when they become young adults at 19 years old, and they offload from the Young Masterminds initiative as participants, then they are welcome into the Mastermind Connect Brotherhood. So now they continue to have the resources, the mentorship at a different level, because obviously we curate these experiences for the young men and speak at their level. But now when they become young adults, now they're exposed to other conversations now with the men of the collective as not as a teenager, but as a man. To give an example, like conversations about divorce or relationships and fatherhood from the perspective of not only us being fathers, but also us being sons. So they are exposed at a deeper level. They also become then the next generation of facilitators working with these young men that they were just a part of, right, at the Young Masterminds initiative. So I know it's a long, answer to that question, because it's a bit complex because of the way that we started, but also we see the need. So reach out to us at campingtoconnect.com. There's a link to volunteer. And then we can have that conversation. We could qualify it. One of our goals is to be able to expand beyond the markets that we're serving currently, even if it's by ways of collaboration with other organizations that may be offering an outdoor, program, the traditional, camping program, and may want to offer a layer, like the one that we implement in our program, so we can share playbook or train the trainer, or simply be a collaboration in which we curate these experiences and we could maybe send a representative, a facilitator to lead, and then be assisted by volunteers from that organization. So there's different ways to skin the cat. I guess, we just need to start talking about it, but we're open.
And we've also had several questions about a version of this program or something similar for young women. So
that question always comes up for obvious reasons. So we are a men's collective, right? And the secret sauce to this program is to be able to relate, to be able to share these experiences and be able to talk about issues that affect us, whether it's a young man or a man of color. So we work directly with male identifying individuals, young men at this point. We are, as we are not defining, but tightening up the program, because we started in 2018 and we're learning a lot of things and building capacity. We do want to be able to offer this, but by partnering with a sister organization, right? A sisterhood that is sort of doing the similar work as this men's collective is doing, so that they too can then do the same for young girls. The same thing for LGBTQIA community, where we do have members who are part of that community, again, but the programming is very specific to simply, young men of color. At some point, we want to be able to have a different version of this program that is exclusively facilitated by men from our collective who are also part of the LGBTQ community, so that they can then have those cohorts and be able to have these other conversations that are a bit more nuanced and go in a deeper level in this type of issues that they're facing. So yeah, like we want to expand. We are a young organization. We need to build capacity. We need financial support so that we can have then administrative work and people to we wear so many different hats right now. It's incredible. And we are volunteer based from the beginning. Like all the men of the collective just volunteering their time to do this work. We didn't set out to start a nonprofit organization. We just wanted to give back, and all of a sudden we were reluctantly going into this space because we wanted to do more, but then it was costing more money, and now we had to run a whole another business, right? That where there's not even a product to sell. We now have to ask for, fundraising or donations and grants. None of us set out to do any of that, but now we have to. So we need volunteers in that way as well, by the way.
But that really speaks to the fact that you've identified a need, and I want to ask the rest of our panelists, and I'll start with you, Curtis. How do we as a community promote inclusion and recognize and address barriers to youth, to nature?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, it's understanding that to feel that sense of belonging, to feel that you can, bring your best version of yourself to spaces is very unique to individuals as well. So, part of it, what has worked for me is having those conversations with people to really see, like, what does it mean to feel that sense of belonging for you? What does it mean to feel welcome, to feel included? And ensuring that agency as well, right? That, people being able to co-create, again, those experiences that allow that sense of belonging to really flourish. And I think kind of opening up conversations or programs with that, because again, we're all coming into these experiences from different places with different past experiences. And I think the other piece of this is really being able to really showcase the work that it takes. So oftentimes, right, when we think about the storytelling, it's this, we talk about like the program or we talk about the end result. And I think, again, this film was a really good example of, you could see the amount of work that went in to making that experience happen, right? All that behind the scenes work that it took to really connect to these people as individuals, to understand what that meaningful experience is to them, right? And that took a lot of time, I have no doubt. So I think being able to really showcase some more of that process work is also really important, because it takes time. It takes intent for us to really create those inclusive opportunities and experiences. And the more that we kind of unveil that curtain a little bit that shows that kind of behind the scenes piece, I think the better that we'll be able to really implement, be more intentional how we're implementing inclusive practices in our programs.
And Rose, you mentioned an important concept, the idea of ecological identity. How do we foster that, especially in young children?
Coincidentally, hiking is one of the major ways in which that happens. Allowing children to climb trees, giving them the very special experiences of building their own campfires. Another thing that I saw in the movie was allowing children to swim in natural water bodies. And so for me in particular, I found that children in our forest preschool develop their ecological identity through naturalist relationships. So being able to identify flora and fauna, it is a process that Curtis and Manny have shown and talked about. You don't need to know yourself immediately what the scientific name of something is in order to identify. You need to be willing to learn alongside the people that you are serving in order to foster that kind of connection. So just identifying based on what it looks like is enough for children in particular. And then there's also a community aspect that we've been talking about here. When you feel like you are part of a community, to say, oh, I am a nature person and my mother would love to see this black walnut that I just picked up. So I'm going to take it home and share it with them. Or, oh, I'm having a campfire right now and I'm part of a community who would really love to be doing this with me. And so also speaking to, those are some of the ways in which the research showed to build ecological identity. But then also speaking to what Curtis was answering about the previous question, is that I have a laundry list of things that could help us build inclusivity, particularly for young children, because nature preschools are something that historically have excluded people of color. And so when Manny's program was telling those boys, those young men, the reason for that, an honest, direct conversation about why you feel that way, why you feel a way that you may not have words to describe, to have those direct conversations. It's the same thing in nature preschool. We do not have a lot of racial diversity in most of our programs because there are systemic barriers in place stopping us from doing that. And so I had a lot of things to say to that too, like the cost of programs, the hours of operation, the gear that we need to do these things. There are safety concerns that you saw, the fear of animals attacking you in the night while you're camping. Those things need to be addressed slowly and with some culturally relevant curriculum around it. So being able to speak to people about what it is they are fearful about, because those will be different among different demographics, and then slowly working with them to make a connection available in that way. And that's the same thing with ecological identity. You are starting to know who you are in relation to where you are. So if you are not a bug person and you don't like bugs like Daddy Long Live, then you don't have to like bugs. You know, we can work up to that, but you don't have to do that right now. And I'll stop there.
So no, I want to piggyback on that as well. You know, you described in terms of your background a very early adoption of a love for nature. What do you see as barriers that we need to recognize? You know, what have you witnessed that you say, you know, we need to work on that?
For sure. I think for me, I'm going to reference the program last year because I feel like that program, I learned so much. And I also, you know, through digging in the research with the PhD program that I'm working on as well, got to see it come alive and just be right present in front of me. But providing opportunities the same way that Manny is providing opportunities to young men of color, you know, that was the driving factor behind Bahamians Birth and Botany, and collaborating with the scientists that I collaborated with, Dr. Ancelino Davis. We brainstormed over a year of what we wanted this program to look like and what we felt the need was. And specifically, what came out was opportunity, exposure, and experience. And being able to provide the students with not just content and curriculum, like that was like the second thing. It was just that opportunity and removing the barriers of cost, removing the barriers of feeling inadequate in the space. So making sure that they knew that they had the resources to support the community to be in the space. Listening to the fears that they might have before we started, getting to know them, you know, all of these tools and, you know, processes that we all think about when we think about cultivating relationships or cultivating experiences for youth. And seeing that come alive in the middle of a national park in the Bahamas with 10 students that, even though the island is 7 by 21, had never been there. And to see them just all focused in on this lizard fight that was happening in front of our eyes, and just hearing them chat about it with their parents on the bus on the ride home, it was just this just epiphany of realizing that it does not have to be complex. Yes, we need resources and money, but we can do a lot with a small amount of money. And getting people, adults that are, you know, ingrained in this work together to make these things happen with no barriers for the students, so that they can just be in the space and they can just ask the questions and they can feel comfortable and they know that they have a community. They don't need to know the scientific name of that bird that they ID'd, but now they have a field guide, they have field journals, they have binoculars, they have apps that they're connected to, and they have each other and they have us as instructors. They have everything that they need. We've removed those barriers and we're slowly supporting them along the way. So I think sometimes it takes a lot of work, but when we really boil it down, there's this simplicity about just taking away those things and just letting the students be in the space. And so I think as we all work together to get youth connected and comfortable and building this community so that they feel supported to be in this space, I think it's going to be really amazing to see the next generation move forward.
You know, it's funny when you talked about the experience of the young people watching the lizards fight. Rose, what have you seen with some of the preschool students? I mean, things that you've witnessed that say, yeah, this is the direction we want to go. These are the kinds of experiences young people need to have.
In nature preschool, there's the ability to do sort of long-term studies of nature, to keep returning back to the same places and seeing things unfold that way. So right now, for example, at Woodend Nature Sanctuary, the younger class has found salamander eggs inside of the pond. So they'll be returning to that pond regularly every day to see when the eggs empty out and see when they can catch salamanders. The same is true for tadpoles, to see the life cycle and metamorphosis of tadpoles that way. We get to see so much. When you spend regular amounts of time outdoors consistently, you really get in tune with nature all around you. Like Curtis was saying of his childhood experiences, you see the same animals doing the same things, but it's always exciting to see them. So even seeing hawks carrying snakes that they just caught to eat, or seeing snakes swallowing frogs. Even recently in our setting, we found a deceased bird that flew into our window, and we got to talk about, this is a bird strike, and here's how we can help by putting up window decals and reflective things on windows. And then even things that you wouldn't necessarily think about or know to look for. So for example, in the springtime, in the wintertime, we look at tree buds, and then in the springtime, you can see that those tree buds are starting to make leaves or flowers or whatever they're producing. And looking at something as small as that can even be a really profound experience that way.
And Rose, I want to ask you, and then I want to get a reaction from Curtis as well. But Rose, those kinds of experiences, not every child obviously is going to become a naturalist or a scientist, though it's great if they do. But how are these experiences formative for them in terms of whatever they end up doing in life?
As a child, I really am passionate about early childhood education, because from birth to age 8, these are the times in your life when you get to be a child. It's the times when you get to learn how to do things and learn about the world and your place in the world. And early childhood, the experiences that you have in early childhood are developmentally formative of the way that you view the world. So if in your childhood you learn to care for an earthworm because you know the role of an earthworm in the ecosystem, then that just builds a foundation for you to care about things that are much more tangible. And so if in childhood you learn why recycling, or let's say composting is a little bit more, if you learn why composting is important and you learn the process of how things decompose and how it can return back to the earth, these are, traditional ecological ways of knowing. So, hearkening back to Native American knowledge and intellect of how to live in harmony and reciprocal relationships with the planet. So if you have lots of these experiences, or even just a few very memorable experiences in early childhood, you have a leg up on a lot of the rest of our population, because we miss out on that. We're thrust into the school system so quickly and removed from nature that way so quickly that it's a real benefit to get a little bit of that before you do move into kindergarten and first grade.
I want to ask a related question to Curtis. I mean, what does it mean when our children miss out on those experiences or don't get those kinds of experiences early? How is that hurting us as a community?
Absolutely. I think that frequency and regularity of experience becomes really critical. And with that over time, you get that creation of familiarity and comfort. One of the things I wanted to call back from the film was, I just love this dynamic between, I think it was one of the participants mentioned, the balance between familiarity and newness. So being familiar with a place that you're going back to regularly while even having new experiences at a same place, that's incredibly dynamic. So even those opportunities of connecting people to places that are in proximity to them, or places that they are maybe more likely to experience and connect with on a regular basis becomes really important. And that, you know, the way that nature is so dynamic is that you can go there every single day or different times and have very different experiences there. So I think that's really important. And so when we don't have that regularity of experience, you lose that connection. And that connection is the piece that really continues to drive that curiosity. It drives that those senses and those feelings of comfort. It drives those feelings of awe and wonder of space and place. And, you know, circling back to a prior conversation we were having this panel about inclusion, one of the things that I wanted to bring up too is it's, from my perspective and experience, it hasn't just even been talking with the participants themselves, but also connection to family. So like as an educator, I used to have so many conversations with the families, the guardian of those participants, because that was taking the time to build trust, right? It wasn't just the participants feeling that they were able to have that sense of belonging, but you had to really have those same dialogues with what inclusion meant to those adults in their lives, those guardians. And that took a lot of time, right? It takes a lot of time to build that trust and rapport. And, you know, I also at the same time want to acknowledge that, you know, one of the challenges that we do face in our industry is turnover, right? Turnover is high, and that's a reality. And so with that, though, this balance of like, well, how do we take the time, given that turnover, to build that trust as individuals that are working with participants in these programs, while also working to institutionalize these relationships of trust over time, right? And that, again, also takes a lot of time. You know, I remember doing a program in a nature center in Southern Maryland, and I was leaving for grad school. I'd been in this job for about 6 years. And all of these families are like, Curtis, please don't go. Please don't leave. We built this trust. You've had, our X number of generations of participants from this family have worked with you. And that's really special. But I felt that connection and the importance of how we built those bonds with family, as part of ensuring that inclusive experience as well. And I don't think that's something that's talked about as much as it should be, when we're talking about engaging youth in the outdoors.
I want to have a related question to ask you, Manny, especially in terms of when you are looking for young people to be in the Camping to Connect program. How do you build that trust? Because we saw a lot of the young people say, they've never been camping before, they've never been in nature, so there's got to be some fear in that, and definitely talking to family. How do you build that relationship, Manny, with Camping to Connect?
I'm triggered right now by this question, just so you know, Vince. It's very challenging, and it's very challenging, not because of the kids themselves. It's very challenging because there's a need for a change of the way by we I mean people of color, see nature and the outdoors, and getting out of the way if our fear of the outdoors, whatever we believe it is, but we inherently, we know we belong outdoors. We know, we come from the motherland, like that nature belongs to us and we belong to nature. We do have a history where our association to nature, as portrayed in the media, and also because history, especially here in the US, where either we're running away from something, we work in the field, the hard labor, even in the movies when one of us is portrayed in a camping trip or in the outdoors, with the black person is the first one to get killed. So we have this association, but we also understand that nature is healing and nature is something good. It's just that we're so used to not coming out to nature that we're in our comfort zone. And the comfort zone may be living in an apartment building in a very chaotic environment with noise pollution and everything, but we're still comfortable in what we know. So the challenge then becomes, how do we convince a parent or a school teacher or principal to give us access to work with the youth before they too get this mental picture of danger and all of that, right? We understand why you feel that way, but we also know, because I say we because we had this conversation with parents before, they know that there's a benefit to the kids going out there, but their own inherent fear then stops them from being proactive in getting them out there. So overcoming that challenge, that's the biggest thing for us. A kid may come and experience it and love it and come home, but the father or the mother cannot really relate to that experience because they themselves haven't gone out there. So part of what we're doing is trying to create, spaces in which, we can take the parents out, or we can offer our gear library, access to it by the parents. And we have seen some of the parents they have gone hiking for the first time with their kid because the way they come back home, so excited and they love it. And we lend them the gear, and then they have a different outlook. Those who do have a different outlook immediately because now I get it. Now I get it. And lastly, I'm going to just share a quick experience that it was very frustrating for me back in 2019, where we were working with someone at a program from the New York City Department of Education, right? And we had access to about 150 young men, high school juniors and seniors who were on a path to college, right? They were supporting them with getting the tools needed for that, and they tapped us in to work with them in other elements about healthy masculinity and all these different things. We did a Camping to Connect experience in Governor's Island, which is a little islet off of New York Harbor, where you can see Brooklyn here, New Jersey over there, Manhattan, downtown Manhattan in front, and then behind Staten Island. Statue of Liberty is basically right across, like 200 meters, 200 meters. So it's like an incredible experience. You take a ferry, short ferry ride, and it was, we had to have a ferry overnight and an EMT, ambulance there overnight, and some chaperones from the DOE. Everybody loved the experience. We had about 30 some young men. They loved the experience. The feedback from the chaperones was amazing to the leadership of the DOE. And they wanted us to continue to work with them, in all the other areas they were working on, and then on this Camping to Connect experience. That was in 2018. In 2019, we were planning a similar experience, but taking them out to the woods, to the wilderness, not just this little curated, park in a way that they have at Governor's Island. We worked for 6 months in putting everything together with them. 2 weeks prior to the actual event, we have reservations for the group campsites and everything, transportation. It got shut down. It got shut down by a woman, a Black woman, a beautiful woman who loves our program, loves us. We love her. I mean, everything great. The one thing why it was shut down is because of her own inherent fear about bears, her own her responsibility at her level for any kind of liability that could happen. So now we're going to red tape. Now we're going to, if something happens, then I'm responsible. So now in our whole department, we can get shut down. So we had 150 young men that we could have been working with and taking them out to nature. And they didn't do it because one person was afraid of bears. So that's what we need to work on. We need to change that perception so that we can then get to work with these kids. So that was incredible to me. It was very frustrating, but also gave us the drive to then, just look for enrollment through other channels.
We have a question that's kind of related to that, and we've talked about this. I initially asked about your personal early experiences with nature. This question says, when we're working to create impactful nature experiences for children, how do we help them find themselves? Rather than thinking about, well, I enjoyed doing this as a child, let me help this child enjoy doing the same thing. How do we help them find their own memorable nature experiences? Rose, let me start with you. How do we kind of get out of the way?
For us, the recurring theme is to allow unstructured free play. And so the unstructured portion of that is very important. And often what you find is that children will begin to pick up sticks and play with sticks. And then we get worried that they're going to poke someone's eye out. So we make rules around sticks and how to use them and what you can do with them. That's one time to step back and examine your own biases, as well as tree climbing. We have a lot of fear around tree climbing. But in those instances, we try to, ask guiding questions to the children. So if you feel uncomfortable with how high up in a tree a child has gone, you, instead of saying, be careful, don't do that, come back down, you can begin to ask them, hey, do you feel safe up there? How's your body feeling? What's your plan for getting out of that tree? Do you need me to stand here? How can I help you? So the unstructured portion is really important if you want to see what naturally arises in children's curiosities and interests. And then I think a little bit of planning would help as well. So first, for you to go wherever you plan to take the child and to scope out the scene and yourself make mental notes about what kinds of hazards might be there, what kinds of risks you feel comfortable facilitating in that environment. It's really hard inner work to be able to sit back and just watch. But that is the main gist of it, that you've got to make time, space, and opportunity for children to explore.
Great answer. When I ask Tenoy the same question, how do we kind of get out of the way? How do we not let our own desire to replicate an experience or our own fear, like that's rather irrational fear of bears, Manny was explaining. How do we kind of get out of the way to let a child have their own formative experience?
For sure. I think, inquiry-based learning where there's that little bit of structure, but not a lot of structure, sending students out to take 5 minutes to just close their eyes and listen and then reflect, taking them to, a certain ecosystem and having them make their own notes and their own observations and teach their peers what they learned in that moment or in that time. With older children, there's a lot of structure, especially if they have not been exposed through early childhood learning. There's a lot of needing to kind of structure for a little bit, but eventually kind of taking your hands back and letting them student lead projects and action items and coming up with a way to, how are we as a group or a community now going to take action, or when should we meet up again? So giving that autonomy once they have the resources and the tools to really just explore and ask the questions, to continue to wander and wonder about what they're seeing, and really creating that space to do that, in all different areas of whatever that program might be or that experience might be. And another thing that I think is really, really important is reflection, which has come up with everyone in this group. Giving students the time and those prompts to really reflect. Education is great and experience is great, but if you don't take the time to truly reflect and to see what it means to you, it doesn't stick as much. And in our fast-paced world, we often don't have time to reflect. Unless you have a mom that's making you journal, you're probably not going to journal at 12 years old, right, Curtis? And so having that structured within your program, I think, is really important, and having that done in various diverse ways too. So maybe it's just a thinking reflection, or maybe it is you're grabbing your journal and you're going off to a corner of the beach or, a part of the forest where you can just explore and think and write those things down and really process the experience. And so I think, adding that structure to sort of start it and then let the ball just kind of roll down the court and see where it lands. I think that's important.
Great perspective. I want to ask you the same thing, Curtis. How do we get out of the way? I mean, how do we let our children enjoy nature, learn about nature, have a personal experience that is their own?
Yep. I think the phrase that I've heard a lot is this unmediated experience in nature. So, and what that does require, to some of the points that have been made before, is yes, so do you have to check, in advance on some of the logistics and the safety and things like that, 100%. But to have those truly unmediated experiences, I think it requires you as an instructor, as a mentor, as a teacher, to be vulnerable in this space that sometimes you don't have all the answers. And that's hard. That's hard to do sometimes, right? Of letting that control go. But there's benefit to that too, because I think students really connect with that vulnerability. This idea that, like, if they see something and it's like, well, what is this? And I was like, I don't know what that is, but let's find out together. I think that there's a lot of value in that. I used to run a program, it was a young naturalist program, and actually was hearing from a lot of the families that, based on a lot of the conversation we have today, right, about structure, they said, they were like, our students get so much structure. We want this about as unstructured as we can get. I'm like, yes, I can do that. But again, what it required for us as instructors of that is, again, that vulnerability, right? The students would see something out there, and again, we didn't always know what it was, right? And that's okay. Right? But we can support them in that self-discovery, and that collective discovery. And so, yeah, I think that becomes really, really important, but difficult, right? It's challenging to be vulnerable and know that maybe you don't know everything, but that's critical.
We've got less than 5 minutes, and this question came in the chat, and I can't believe I didn't ask this earlier, because it's very important. How do we eradicate the idea, and certainly not introduce the idea, jokingly or not, when it comes to nature? Well, that's not something that Black people do, or Black people don't do that. How do we get rid of that? And Tanoy, let me start with you.
That's a really great question. I think it's definitely going to depend on the community and the audience, right? So if it's your family, I know with my family, I'm sort of poking. Me and my daughter are going to be there in the Bahamas for about a month in June, running some programs and spending time with family. And I'm like, okay, we're going to the national parks. Like, who's coming with me on a Saturday? And there's some comments here or there, but a couple of cousins that are willing and ready to go. But it was just, for my family, it was just kind of saying, like, hey, I'm planning it. Like, here's what, show up. This is what we're going to do. I'll be with you. We got this, sort of thing. And so that's a little bit different because that's a personal level. But, I think going back to something that Curtis said is a huge prompt for me recently is and also Manny as well. I think everyone's touched on this, but providing opportunities for adults, in ways that, whether it's through that family connection or maybe just more adult targeted programs and opportunities, so that they can get that opportunity, exposure, experience in slow incremental ways that removes the barriers and also increases the benefits for that group that you're working with, and really assessing what that looks like and giving those opportunities to slowly sort of just peel back those layers of, yes, like, we can be there too. Like, this is really fun. This is great for your health. And this is a different world, something new, and it's okay. I think, sort of really leaning into that a bit more and seeing what we can all do as professionals in the community to sort of peel those layers, I think is a really great start.
Great answer. Curtis, let me ask you the same thing. Quickly, how do we get rid of this idea that, and when it comes to nature, well, that's the thing that Black people don't do?
Yeah, I think this is where the representation piece is really important. And certainly there's the equity and the inclusion to get us there, that we really have to focus in on. But I think being able to see yourself, see people that look like you, that, have those same interests as you have, I think that resonates a lot. And it's a very powerful experience to have. So I think the more that we can certainly have, sessions and forums like this, that there are more groups like, the group that Manny is leading, right? And the storytelling comes with that. the work that Tanoya and that Rose are doing, like all of that makes a huge difference to kind of change that narrative around.
Rose, same question. How do we help people understand it, especially young children, especially Black children? We do all things in nature.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've found the most success coming from Black-led organizations or organizations created by and run by and for people of color. So to quickly, before we run out of time, I would tell you to support those organizations, because trying to do the other way to get predominantly white organizations to get to that and help us with that is much more difficult. So I find a lot of success in Black-led and Black-run organizations that are doing the work.
Excellent advice. And Manny, I'm going to close with you. And I'm also going to add, a lot of people are asking how they can see the film again. But again, I'm going to ask, how do we eradicate this idea that nature is something Black people don't do, or specific things in nature?
Well, yeah, I'm going to try to keep it short. I know we're running out of time. When that topic comes up about, Black people don't do that, I ask, so what do Black people do? What is it that we do? And then they start naming, basketball, this, that, and the third. And I'm like, okay, I appreciate that perspective. Can I offer you mine? And when they say yes, obviously, I say, okay. I say, Black people do whatever the hell they please. We don't have the constraints of what other people do or don't do. Every single thing that we have set out to, any space that we have set out to enter in, we have conquered, broken, the ceilings. We have achieved greatness in. So we do whatever we want. And the outdoors, we come from that. And we've been robbed from those spaces by being clustered into communities that have poor access to nature and institutionalized, systemic, issue where it's designed to make us feel unwelcome. But it's on us, like everything else, to simply step up to the plate, open the gate and walk through it. So nature deficiency causes depression, anxiety, stress, all of these ailments, many of these ailments that we suffer from because we don't get out there. So is that what Black people do? Just get diseases just because we don't want to come out of a comfort zone? No, we do whatever we want. And that means we look after our mental and physical health by going into nature and connecting with nature. And the more that we expose people to this and sometimes are blunt about it, then the faster we're going to be able to conquer this idea of what Black people can or cannot do. So clusters, the same way that the cities have these clusters of unhealthy areas and stuff, by us coming together like this, organizations led by many of you or being involved in these organizations, you yourself are creating a paradigm shift. Where now your family members and friends and people in your community are seeing you and those that you are communing with having these experiences and being curious about it. And then you can teach them. You can take a role of leadership. Even if you're not leading an organization, you can still take a role of leadership within your community in welcoming them and showing them, yes, there are bears. Yes, these things happen. By the way, this is the data. And by the way, these are the spaces you can start with that are safer. We might not want to go camping for the weekend yet, but what about a day hike? Let's just walk a mile. Let's just go into nature. Come with me. I'll show you. And even on a pre-trip, experience, we can go over, how it's going to be, where we're going to park, where we're going to go, how long it's going to be, how difficult it may be, what kind of map or app we're going to use to address their concerns, so that they can feel safer and welcome into the space.
And that's where we're going to have to end it. Thank you so much to a fantastic panel. Really appreciate all the insights. And thank everyone else for being a part of this. And we will see you at 2:00 with Rue Map of Outdoor Afro, presented by REI Co-op. Thanks.